Friday Night Hoops in Orange, California. And what a spectacle we have. It's the first ever CSBN Tier 1 game that does not feature Chapman Athletics. Instead, it's the Sagens of Pomona Pitzer who take on the Wildcats of Lindfield. Welcome everybody to the broadcast. My name is Nico Schlegler, joined alongside Zoe Franklin. We'll be joined in just a moment by our very own Jad Nism making his on-camera debut. But Zoe, we have quite the treat in store. Two teams looking to get back to winning ways here in Orange.
Absolutely. If you joined us for the previous game of Chapman versus UT Dallas, you know it was an exciting game. We're hoping to continue that streak here with Lindfield versus Pomona Pitzer. These two teams had rough seasons last year. They had losing records. 5 of 20 for Pomona Pitzer, 11 and 14 for the Lindfield Wildcats. What can they look to improve on this season, looking at their statistics from last year?
Well, both of these teams really struggled in terms of getting the ball through that bucket. When you take a look at their points per game, they were both pretty solid, and the field goal percentage, they obviously like that to go up a bit more, closer to 50%. But when you take also a look at Lindfield, they're a team that knows how to force turnovers, 11.2 steals per game, as for Pomona, 9.6. And both of these teams, you mentioned it earlier, Lindfield 11-14 last year, Pomona 5-20. You'd expect a lot more, and especially for both of these teams having young cores, they're looking to make that push into the playoffs for both of their respective conferences.
Absolutely, and for Lindfield, this is their first game of the season, and with that first game, you're really setting the tone for yourself. Yes, you can always come back, and yes, there are 25 games in a regular season, but it starts with number one, and number one begins right here on the Chapman Sports Broadcast Network, here live on Flow Sports.
Absolutely. Pomona Pitzer, we mentioned it earlier, 5-20 last year, 2-14 in the conference. How good would it feel for a team like them to get off to a 2-0 start?
It would feel amazing for them. They lost their first game last season, so already they're on a winning streak. They're 1-0. 100% record right now. You want to keep that going as long as possible. And to give us more insight onto this game, we're going to toss to our sideline reporter.
Absolutely. Jad, what do you have for us?
Thank you, Nico and Zoe. My name is Jad Nizam, and I will be your sideline reporter for tonight's highly anticipated matchup between Pomona Pitzer and Lindfield. Pomona Pitzer is coming off a 57-50 win and is looking to make that 2 wins in a row, while Lindfield has their season debut. I'll send it back to you guys in the booth. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Jad. You mentioned it, 57-50 win over UCSC. It has to feel good for Pomona, but Lindfield, it's their first game of the season. They won an exhibition game against Walla Walla. What can we expect out of them as they try and climb the ranks of the Northwest Conference?
We can expect them to really rely on their players. They have a mix of upperclassmen and underclassmen, and we're going to look at both sides of the coin with offense and defense, and we're going to look to our key players in just a second here.
Absolutely. When we take a look at Pomona Pitzer, who dominated the court for them last year, you'd have to say it's Lee. Which one? Both of them. And let's start off with Jaden Lee. Phenomenal last year in her freshman campaign, put up 16.4 points per game, good for 5th in the SCIAC.
Absolutely. Jaden Lee, if you look at that, those assists per game as well, basketball is ultimately a team sport, and if you can get those points on the board, but also help your team get those points on the board, that means that you're a well-rounded player and not just a one-trick pony. But on the other side of the coin, we have Lee. That is Emily Lee.
Emily Lee, fantastic last year, Zoe. Obviously, when you take a look at what she did last game, 17 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, had 15 points last year as a sophomore. And when you take a look at this Pomona team just in general, they have a bunch of young talent, 11 underclassmen on the team, but now in her junior year, Emily Lee needs to take that next step as a leader. Going over to the Lindfield side, though, you have to say that Mickey Vermeulen, now in her junior year, has to take that next step as a leader.
Absolutely. Mickey Vermeulen, if you look at her rebounds per game last season, she had over 8 per game. Excuse me, my bad. Jillian Landis, you know. Names are hard sometimes. We all mess up from time to time. Jillian Landis, we look at that, those rebounds, those points, those blocks, 18 in a game. And looking at those rebounds, Mickey Vermeulen, like I said earlier.
Absolutely. When you take a look at what Vermeulen did last year, those two, Landis and Vermeulen, dominated the boards for the Wildcats. Vermeulen in particular, 8.5 per game to go along with 8 points. She also put up 42% on the field goal percentage. So when you get her going on the hot hand, paired up with Landis as well as Eve Burke playing at point guard this season with Ella Kovalin being out for the year, their expected starting point guard. Obviously, good things may come for the Wildcats, but all the action will be here at CSBN at the Harold Hutton Sports Center, as we'll take it off for a quick break right here on CSBN. evening and welcome back to the Harold Hutton Sports Center. Good to be with you, Nico Schlegler alongside Zoe Franklin. And Zoe, when we take a look at tonight's matchup, Pomona Pitzer versus Lindfield, definitely two sides of a different coin. When you take a look at Pomona, young guns, 7 freshmen, 11 underclassmen in total compared to Lindfield's 10 upperclassmen. How does that experience affect them in this matchup?
Well, you mentioned it earlier with Copeland being out for the season. She's a junior coming in. With their experience, that means that they have more of a team to draw on and more cohesion. Yes, that loss is detrimental, and as a team, you never want to lose someone before the season even begins. But because you have that rapport with them, you're able to build off of that. Whereas with the Sagehens, 7 freshmen, this is only their second game for them as a team, whether they're on the bench, whether they're starting, whether they're going to be coming in as a substitute. So you still have to kind of build that team chemistry and find your language within your unit.
There you see the Chapman women's basketball team coming off a tough loss just moments ago, 58-55 to UT Dallas. By no stretch of the imagination, UT Dallas, a very difficult team to beat indeed now in Division II. But getting back to this matchup, you mentioned Ella Copeland. She's out for the season, was expected to be their starting point guard. Instead, they're going to have to rely on a few of their underclassmen to step up, but most importantly, Eve Burke, the junior out of Port Angeles, Washington. They expect her to make a massive impact as Copeland out for the year.
Absolutely. We're getting close to the start of this game, Nico. We see both of these teams in that huddle, and they're looking like they're ready to go.
Absolutely. Lindfield come into today's game, their first of the season. They had an exhibition against Walla Walla, which they won, but they didn't really score that much, just 54 points. They're expecting a bigger output here against Pomona Pitzer when we take a look at what both of these teams did last year. Scoring offense-wise, Lindfield 59 points a game, Pomona Pitzer 61.6. The scoring margin, both of them in the negative. They both had losing records. Pomona Pitzer, more in particular, 5-20, 2-14 in the SCIAC. How do they turn it around this year with this young squad?
You're looking for that spark, you're looking for something new, and you're looking for your defense to step up. Pomona Pitzer usually lost by a margin of 8 points per game. So you want to minimize that deficit. If you look at the previous two scores, 57-54, theoretically Pomona Pitzer would be the one on top. But as we know, the cookie doesn't always crumble that way, and it's about to be a great shakeup.
Cookie doesn't crumble. Perfectly said, Zoe. As we get set for the starting lineups, we'll let our very own Stephen Alveda take the rest as we get set for Pomona versus Lindfield here at the Harold Hutton Sports Center at Chapman University.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's NCAA Division III women's basketball contest between the designated visiting team, the Pomona Pitzer Sagehens, and the designated road team, the Lindfield University Wildcats. Let's meet today's starters first. Up is starting for Pomona Pitzer as a forward, 6-foot freshman out of Port Dallas, Oregon, number 11, Charlotte Patel. For Lindfield, a guard sitting at 5'10", a junior from Renton, Washington, number 3, Nikki Boomerang. For Lindfield, we've got a guard, 5'6", junior from San Jose, number 21, Emily. For Lindfield, we have a 5'7" guard, a junior out of Port Angeles, Washington, number 4, Eva. For Pomona Pitzer, our forward sitting at 6 feet tall, sophomore from Lindfield, Illinois, number 22,
As you heard, courtesy of our very own Steven Alveda, the starting lineups, Mickey Vermeulen, Eve Burke, along with Amelia Solt, Ali Mead, and Jillian Landis for Lindfield. Quite the lineup for them, going against the likes of Charlotte Patel, the freshman out of Corvallis, Oregon, joined alongside Emily Lee, Jaden Lee, Abigail Homan, and Charlize Andaya. But obviously, the biggest matchup of them all being Abigail Homan at 6 foot versus the 6'2" Jillian Landis in the middle of that court.
We saw in the previous matchup, sometimes height does make a difference, sometimes it doesn't. We're gonna see it right at the beginning of tip-off, and off we go.
Tip-off goes to Pomona, and Emily Lee, the junior, stop and stutter. Oh, and what a move to begin this game. Emily Lee, coming out of San Jose, California, already pouring it on, had 17 points in that opener. Gets a quick 2 to begin this one. Here's Mead, blows by Jaden Lee. Into the corner with Eve Burke. They expect a lot out of her now with Mickey Vermeulen. Landis versus Homan in the middle of that park. We'll see that all night long. Shot clock at 7. Mead needs to go. Lindfield really winding it down. Landis with 2 to shoot, doesn't see it. And a quick 30-second violation by Pomona's defense. Already they're pouring it on both sides of the court, Zoe.
I mean, you said it right there, Nico. The Lindfield Wildcats last season averaged just over 4 turnovers per game, already won with less than a minute into their first game.
Approaching a minute gone, almost an errant pass. Kept alive by Andaya. And an offensive foul, as it was Amelia Solt who hit the hardwood very hard. Off of the challenge from Charlotte Patel. They expect a lot out of Patel in her freshman campaign. Played 33 minutes in her first start against UCSC, one of 7 freshmen on this Pomona squad. So a 30-second violation on the first possession for Lindfield. Let's see what they can do on the second. They turn it over. As Vermeulen to Landis are 2 key players not having the connection, maybe a little bit of that early season rust.
Amelia, the senior, we mentioned at the beginning that experience versus vigor and youth. We're seeing it in the first minute, but obviously a lot more play to happen.
Lee drives left, finds Homan in the middle. Soft touch, can't get it to go. And it will ricochet its way off of Abigail Homan. Coming out of Naperville, Illinois, a few non-California natives on this Sage Hen squad. Obviously Pomona College among those great colleges up there in Claremont and Pomona. Now with Burke. Mead, left wing, scanning for options. She hasn't put it on the deck once in this game. Eve Burke runs into trouble. Inside Solt, Landis. Oh, what a find by Amelia Solt, and that's exactly what Casey Bunn-Wilson in her 10th season as head coach wants to see out of her offense.
And you mentioned, Nico, a lot of non-California natives on Pomona-Pitzer, but especially on the Lindfield Wildcats, a team in the Northwest Conference that you normally don't see here on the SCIAC network.
Charlize Andaya spins around. Oh, and what a touch. Charlize Andaya, another San Jose native out of California, now in her grad season. Played all 50 games in her first 2 years, just now 18 since her beginning of her junior season. Shot too strong from Solt. And a tie up in the middle of the paint. And Eve Burke earns another possession back for the Wildcats. Already a bit back and forth between these 2 teams. Haven't met up very often in their time as Division III programs. Surely some of that inexperience coming to the forefront early.
We're seeing some of that. We're seeing a lot of Abigail Homan all over the ball, getting those defensive stops, going for the grab. Unsuccessful that time, but making it difficult. Pomona holding on to that 2-point lead early.
Burke's 3 off front iron. And Pomona seems like they're a team that loves to drive left early in this matchup. Now with Jaden Lee, top 5 scorer in the SCIAC last year with 16.4 points, but she can't just score, she also just does everything on the court. First in free throw percentage, 3rd in assists per game, and 1st in total minutes played. Only player in the SCIAC to play over 900 last season, Zoe. Unbelievable as a freshman.
Incredible. Normally you don't see that, but with inexperience comes opportunity.
Unbelievable from Emily Lee. We mentioned it earlier in the pre-show. which one's the key player? Why not both of them? And it's been the junior who's had her say early in this first quarter. Landis given the wide open three. She'll cash it in. Jillian Landis says, don't leave me open. And Amelia Solt with some early pressure, but something that we haven't really seen out of the senior as her time at Lindfield wanes down. Great to see her get on the score sheet from behind the arc.
Normally her three-point percentage last year just over 22%, but she knocks that one down nice and easy.
Now Emily Lee, 4 quick points for her. Patel, the freshman, looked inside for Homan. And the first real miscommunication error from this Pomona squad as 2 subs will come in. Shea Joko, as well as number 10, Sarah Chico, 2 more freshmen out of Santa Ana and Fort Collins, Colorado, respectively, getting their first play time of the first. Mead puts it on the deck into the corner. And great closeouts from Pomona to keep him off the three-point line. No matter for Allie Mead as she gets her first points of the game.
Allie Mead, we've seen her on both ends of the floor. Right now, she's out at the three-point arc. She had 11 steals last season. She's 5'5", so she's small, so she can weave her way in.
Jaden Lee continues to excite now in her sophomore season. Gets her first points of the game. Now Mead just got her first bucket, forced to give it up to Landis. Clock down to 12, Landis inside. And too tall for the likes of Shea Joko. Jillian Landis, she'll eat up that mismatch every single time that she's not on Abigail Homan. Homan goes right at her, and throws it right into her hands. Big time stuff from the senior. But the alertness from Shea Joko gets the ball right back into Sage Hens territory. You'd have to say for both of these teams right now, they have to slow it down.
Absolutely. And for, well, do you have to say that, Nico?
Well, I mean, it's 10-9 now, and it seems like the player who plays at their own pace has to always be Jaden Lee. Just gets that left hand silky smooth, almost like James Harden. Burke with the cut inside, kicks it out. Mead rattles in and out. And now Lee up ahead of the pack. Jaden Lee, right-handed lay-in. And Pomona takes an early three-point lead. It's 12-9 with just over 4:30 left. Mead scans for help. Now over to Burke. Lindfield looking to swing the rock around and eventually gets it inside to Landis. Land ho, they say, as they pull it back within 1.
Jillian Landis has 9 of Lindfield's 11 points. Her and Mead are the only 2 to have scored. Nico, what does Lindfield have to do to up the production of the rest of the team?
Well, so far they've been able to swing the rock around as Landis will pick up Homan in the middle of that paint. But they need a little bit more freedom to be able to go and create their own shot. And the and one foul. Landis stands in disbelief. Abigail Homan takes those freebies for lunch as the sophomore played 39 minutes in the season debut, already off to a quick start.
We mentioned the question of height at the very beginning of this game. Abigail Homan, 6 feet tall. Jillian Landis, 6'2". We saw Homan just right there playing that to her advantage. There's more of Landis to go around and more to push off of to force that foul.
Absolutely, and going back to your last point with Landis, 9 of their 11 points, but they really have to space that floor out with the likes of Eve Burke. Allie Mead also has shot a 3, made one, but when you consider how they played throughout last season, they really struggled from three-point land, just over 25%. How can they change that around, especially with some newcomers in the lineup?
They have to get more production from their outside players. Salt and Burke have only attempted 1 field goal each and made none of them. So they need to up that production from beyond the arc, and their defense has to allow for that to have those smooth shots. We saw Landis wide open 3. With that communication, we could expect to see more opportunity.
Absolutely, and just taking a look at Pomona Pitzer, 7 of 8 to begin the game. Not a usual sight you see in Division III, if I have to be completely honest. Pomona Pitzer shot 38.4% from the field last season. Right now, shooting just above 87% to begin this game through the first 6 minutes, 20 seconds, as Abigail Homan will get to the line for the first time, trying to tack on points, potentially 3 and 4 of the night for the sophomore.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, Nico, that unusual scoring quality we saw in the last game with UT Dallas and Chapman, 18-9 in the first quarter. We've already surpassed that here.
So Homan completes the N1. She'll get a breather as Landis will step out of the game as well. So going back to that previous point, where does the scoring now come from for the Wildcats? Have to imagine Eve Burke would be at the center of it all. Picked up her dribble early though. Now with Jaden Ray into the game for the first time. Feed it inside, Hokema, Burke, pump fakes, goes inside. Offensive foul. Putting her body on the line, Shea Joko gets down with the dirty work.
That was just basketball IQ right there, knowing exactly where you need to stand and planting your feet and bracing yourself to take that charge.
Into the game for the first time, Kayla Malik gets it off to Emily Lee. Now with Joko. Operating traffic, picked up by Solt. Looked inside for Patel, just a little too much, and you'd have to expect that out of a team like Pomona Pitzer, rocking 7 of these freshmen, and these aren't freshmen that are riding the bench early in this season. They expect big minutes out of them. What can we expect from them in this game as well as going forward for the rest of the year?
Energy, we've seen it already. They are going fast. They already have 15 points with just under 3 minutes in the clock, and they're putting pressure on Lindfield, not letting them up.
Turnaround jumper from Jaden Ray goes in and out. Back the other way, Joko. Pomona, as you mentioned, Zoe, trying to play with pace. Malik off the back iron. And Lindfield gets a breather. Where do the points come from? Haven't scored ever since Landis got off the court. Burke, corner 3. Off front iron, gets her own rebound. And easy pickings for Eve Burke, her first points of the game.
And that's huge. Sometimes you just need to see the ball go into the net so that psychological effect just wears off.
And they force a quick turnover as well, as out of bounds was Sarah Chico coming out of Fort Collins, Colorado. Foot on the line, gives Lindfield a little bit of that breather. And while you have to say Pomona's looked like the better team, it's only a 2-point game with just under 2 minutes now left in this first quarter, Zoe.
Very different story to the previous game. If you joined us for that, thank you so much for staying tuned. A large deficit in the beginning, close deficit in the second half. Maybe it'll be the opposite, or maybe it'll be close throughout.
Ray got around, didn't have the touch though, and an offensive foul on the rebound. Looks like it will be against number 2, Jordan Roberts. Roberts, a twin of Logan Roberts, both juniors on the team. Both of them, you'd have to argue their best sport's actually track and field. Jordan Roberts being top 10 at the Northwest Conference Track and Field Championships for 100-meter hurdles. Joko, too strong, kept alive by Chico, pulls up. And right now, Pomona Pitzer just can't find a bucket ever since Jaden Lee went out of the game. Slowing it down is Solt. Amelia Solt, 6 points per game last year. Now in her junior season. Finds Ray inside, Hokema. Oh, what a find. Junior to freshman, and Lindfield ties this game up 15 apiece. 60 seconds remain in this first quarter.
You mentioned, Nico, since Jaden Lee has gone out, the Sage Hens haven't had a bucket. It was the same with Jillian Landis. Jaden Lee is their leading scorer, but only by 2 points. But it goes to show how much of an impact player she is, that just her being out has an effect on this team.
Hokema's shot too strong, and right on cue, Lee and Homan get right back to the scorer's table, looking to check back in for the final few seconds of this first. Joko. Searching, Emily Lee. Wanted the foul, didn't get it. And now Lindfield, they want to go fast, but they can hold for the final shot. Almost turned over by Roberts. And a foul against Charlize Andaya.
Interesting decision there to pass it up half court. With so much time left on the clock, you would imagine you would want to stretch out the clock to get that final shot, especially since it's tied 15-15. What do you think their reasoning was behind that?
Well, it was interesting just to begin with Lindfield going quickly. You think with the shot clock off, they would go hold for the last shot. Instead, now Pomona can go the other way and take the lead back right again, 15-15. Final few seconds, Homan squares up a three. Too much on it, Roberts corrals in the rebound. Mead, half-court prayer, nowhere close. And the first quarter between these two teams, Lindfield and Pomona Pitzer, ends 15-15. Quite an even matchup, especially once Jaden Lee and Jillian Landis get out of the game with 9 points and 6 points respectively.
Absolutely. You see these two impact players, these two players that we talked about in the beginning, and they're showing why we talked about them in the beginning, but for completely different reasons. Jillian Landis really getting inside, aside from that three-pointer early, really getting inside, pushing the pressure. Jaden Lee knows how to worm her way about the arc and find those open shots.
Absolutely. When you take a look at their play styles, Jaden Lee, the creator, silky smooth, I'd like to say. The way that she's able to get off the dribble, float it in with that left hand. Jillian Landis, though, 6'2". She's been a monster in the middle, but she has dealt with foul trouble throughout her time in college. How might that affect this matchup going forward, especially for the likes of Abigail Homan down on that block?
Since she is their leading scorer, 9 points in that first quarter, 9 of their first 11, and she already has 1 personal foul, that would mean that they would have to conserve her playing minutes to make sure that they had her in the end. That would allow Abigail Homan to have more playing time and potentially get easier shots with less resistance.
Absolutely. Abigail Homan, the main center for Pomona Pitzer, now in her sophomore year. A part of that big three with the 2 Lees, but the question for Pomona Pitzer now is who's going to join that? They went 2-14 in the conference, 5-20 overall. How can they get off to this 2-0 start? Homan has to be a big part of that as this season continues to progress.
You gotta involve these other members of your team. You have to involve the likes of Joko and Chico. And hopefully we're gonna see that in that second quarter and beyond.
First playing time for Elsa Cuttrell for Pomona Pitzer alongside for the starters. Lee to Lee, fired away. Emily Lee, cash it in with greens. Emily Lee quick to begin the second quarter like she did in the first. 7 points, a team high for her.
If you're Pomona Pitzer, you don't mind a battle of the Lees. That brings Lee above Lee in the leading scorer category. Try saying that 5 times fast. But you don't mind that if it's upping your production and keeping the ball moving.
Mead kicks out. Barter can't get the response. And now up ahead on Daya. Jaden Lee running the floor right at Barter. First missed shot of the night for Jaden Lee. Andaya left alone. Too much on it. And hauled in by Hokema. Still no sign of Jillian Landis to begin this second quarter. Jaden Ray picked up by Andaya. Goes to her right. Steps through. All ball by Andaya. And they'll call a jump ball. What a play from the grad student.
We've mentioned the height a couple of times, Nico. In basketball, you're talking about height all the time. It's a big topic of conversation. However, Pomona Pitzer is leading in a category where height is prevalent. Rebounds. They have 10 rebounds as compared to Lindfield's 7 rebounds. Jillian Landis only has 2 rebounds. That could be due to her limited playing time so far, but she is back. That's crucial if you want to get those second chance points.
Will that spell trouble for Pomona now out of this out-of-bounds play? Barter, handoff to Roberts. Kicked out Solt, getting big minutes early in this game. Lefty touch, up and in, and the foul. Pomona exacerbated Solt with jubilation. Lindfield a chance to tie it up at 18.
Those are the first points on the board for Amelia Solt. The first points on the board for someone not named Landis, Burke, or Mead.
And Landis rattles in the free throw. This game tied up at 18 apiece. Played 25 games for the Wildcats last year. Spent her freshman year at Carleton College in Minnesota. Another player they expect to take a big step in her junior year. Lee, Jaden Lee that is, picks up her dribble. Homan down low on Landis. Handoff Lee into the corner. Tipped away and the Wildcats come up with it. Ray the other way. Roberts stops on a dime, throws it right away to Andaya.
That was a beautiful block by Madison Barter right there, just stopping it right in there, right in the tracks. But choo-choo, the track's still moving.
Train's still moving. Charlize Andaya going coast to coast, freight train, as she has a chance for a three-point play off the fast break.
We didn't see too many three-point plays in the first half, Nico. Both teams were doing pretty okay with their fouls.
Fouling obviously a big thing, a concern for a lot of these teams as they get into foul trouble very easily typically. Andaya trying to elevate this score to 3. Off back iron, but picked up, and Pomona regains possession. We'll have a quick reset of the shot clock, and that's exactly, if you're Lindfield, you cannot be allowing those offensive rebounds to haunt you throughout this game.
Absolutely not. Lindfield has been chipping away, but they've still been down or tied this entire game.
Kicked out Malik, Homan in the middle, 7 to shoot. Lee gets to her spot. And ever since that first quarter, Jaden Lee just has not had the golden touch that she's had throughout her first season and since. Now Landis, top of the key. Solt blows by Malik, and they'll get a carry on her. First turnover of the game for the junior. Back and forth we go now. Homan kicked outside. Malik, freshman, drives in on Solt. Homan, free throw line jumper, butter. Pomona up by 4.
For these Lindfield Wildcats, I want to talk about Madison Barter real quick. We didn't really talk about her at the top of the show. She's one of the younger players, a sophomore. She's the leading rebounder, and in that last play, she was nowhere near the ball, and they were able to score. She's helping take some of that pressure off of Landis as a 5'8" forward, and that's crucial.
Great bit of defensive work from Elsa Cuttrell, who gets a well-deserved rest. And a foul will go against Jaden Lee, her first of the night. Going to the line will be Eve Burke. But one of the other things about this game being in Orange, California, both of these teams not playing on the road. Surprisingly, Lindfield, for whatever reason, coming all the way from Washington, gets to be the home team against Pomona Pitzer, who only drove about an hour away. Burke rattles out the first. But this potential quote-unquote home court advantage of Pomona having their fan base here compared to Lindfield, that plays a little bit of a factor as the Seichen fans travel well.
Absolutely. When you're not at your home crowd, you don't have the advantage of the student body who are just maybe wanting to spend a Friday night doing something a little different. These are parents who dedicated time to come out, or friends and family. And especially if you're Lindfield, that's a very select few.
Fired away, Emily Lee missed everything. Solt back the other way. Burke runs the floor into the lane. Soft touch and lead back down to 1. Eve Burke makes up for the missed free throw.
That's the second time we've seen that long half-court pass from Solt. This time it was successful, though. At the end of that first quarter, it was fast and furious, but not so ferocious. That time, ferocious.
Mead up and in, and the foul! Mistakes piling up for the Sagehens. Wildcats pounce on them with force.
And that's the first time that Lindfield's seen a lead in this game. It's a lead of 1, but you only need to win by 1. It's a terrible number to lose by, but it's extra sweet to win by.
Mead trying to make it even sweeter with the three-point play. Does it with a swish. And this is a Lindfield team that comes into this year, according to their coach, Casey Bunn-Wilson, with a lot of confidence that they can be among the best in the Northwest Conference. Homan tries to have a say at it. Instead, Landis held her ground. Wildcats, first lead of the night, up 24-22. Burke into the lane, cutting inside.
And that's exactly what we were talking about wanting to see. We've seen more production from Mead and Burke, taking the load off Jillian Landis, who has been scoreless this quarter.
Quite surprising to see after her performance in the first quarter. They were really force-feeding her, and we mentioned it in the first. Who else is going to create their own offense? It's been the likes of Amelia Solt playing the playmaker role, and Burke and Mead being the beneficiaries in this second quarter.
So now it's the Pomona Pitzer Sage Hens who are going to have to play a little bit of catch-up here.
And they played a lot of catch-up. Last season being 5-20 overall on the year. Already 1-0 this season, looking to make it 2. Jaden Lee can't buy a bucket in this second quarter. Quick pass, Homan gets around Vermeulen. And somehow Pomona Pitzer just cannot find the bottom of that bucket right now.
And you saw Mickey Vermeulen just at the bottom of that barrel, not so much in her playmaking, but literally on the bottom. Homan was just on top of her.
Just 7 points so far for Pomona in the second after 15 in the first. What a turnaround by Lindfield to take the lead for the first time tonight. Driving kick, Joko gets tangled up, and a foul will go against number 12, Jaden Ray, the junior out of Hermiston, Oregon.
Pomona Pitzer struggling with their field goal percentage. They were 7-14 in the first quarter, just 3 of 10 this quarter with just over 5 to go.
They run the same play for Patel now with Joko. Lee, can she get her first of the second? Instead throws it right into Soul. Nobody tracked back for the Sage Hens. Ray, other way, blocked by Jaden Lee. But so far in this second quarter, some of these mishaps really starting to compound for the Sage Hens on offense. Outside, Soul, corner 3, too short. And now Joko wants to play with pace. Homan, baseline, gets around them all. Left-handed, finish up and in, lead back down to 2. And for the first time in a few minutes, Pomona gets one in the bucket. And you mentioned the psychological effect of just seeing that ball go into the net has to feel so good. As Landis, she gets to see that for the first time in the second quarter, pushes the lead right back up to 4, her 11th point of this game.
And Landis, the first person in this game on either side of the offense to reach double digits.
Emily Lee trying to join that club, runs into trouble. But nifty maneuver, toilet bowls it in. Emily Lee now up to 9 points, leading scorer for the Sage Hens after 17 to begin this year against UCSC.
We mentioned it, Jaden Lee the leading scorer last season, but if you're looking at this season, which is one game specifically, Emily Lee is the leading scorer with those 17 points you just mentioned, Nico.
The junior taking on that leadership role we mentioned in the beginning for this young squad trying to turn some heads in the SCIAC. A little bit like these Chapman Panthers, who last year came roaring back after a struggling start, almost made it all the way into the playoffs. Lee, 6 to shoot, goes right at Mead. Mead blocks her away. Slowed down by Ray. Lindfield lead by 2, now with Solt. Vermeulen, we haven't seen much of her in this game, trying to get her own, too strong, as it will tip off of Charlotte Patel. Possession will stay with Lindfield, as back into the game for the Sage Hens is Elsa Cuttrell, the freshman out of Portland.
If you've been listening, you've heard the name Lee quite often. You've heard Emily Lee, you've heard Jaden Lee, for good reason. They're the leading scorers, but Jaden Lee last season was also the leader in blocks for this Pomona Pitzer's defense. How important is it that she plays on both ends of the field for the Sage Hens, and is it too much to ask of her to be the leader in both categories?
Well, her effort is undeniable on both sides of the floor, and you could say that it's too much, but I think that she's up to the challenge so far through her first season and now entering her sophomore year. But she needs a little bit more help Emily Lee as well as Abigail Homan providing it not just last year, but also to begin this season. The question is, who else is coming along for that ride on that train?
Absolutely. We've seen Homan and we've seen Andaya, but we haven't seen anything from Patel, Chico, or Joko, or even Cottrell. Cottrell yet to even attempt a field goal, has been there, has had a rebound, but her presence could be a little more overstated.
So both of these teams looking to start their seasons off well. First game of the year for Lindfield. That graphic should not say 0-2. They are 0-0 to begin this season. Pomona, on the other hand, 1-0 to begin this year after a 57-50 win. We got a special treat coming up at halftime. Our very own Jad Nism will join us in the booth for a little treat that we have. A little look back to the past, but back to the future. Right now in the present, missed three from Solt. Back the other way goes Homan. Joko still searches for her first points, the freshman. Inside to Patel. Swung over, Lee. Laid off for Joko, 9 to shoot. Oh, what a find inside. Laying it up and in, Elsa Cottrell. 3 freshmen out there, and they're working wonders for this Pomona side.
About to go back in time and retract my statement. Elsa Cottrell, she's on the board. She must have heard me and was like, I'm not finished playing it. I've barely even started.
Classic little announcer jinx, you'd have to say. Zoe going to the benefit of Cottrell this time. Mead into the lane. Up and in, Allie Mead. Been a surprise performer so far this game. She's already up to 7.
She averaged just over 4 points last season, so well above her average so far, and there's still tons of play to go.
Now in her junior year, you'd have to expect the experience, giving her a little bit more confidence to get to that cup and really be a playmaker outside of Landis and Burke, who we expect to be the main 2 for the Wildcats this season.
Absolutely, and she has a steal and a block and 2 assists to go along with it. She's packing those stats today, not just on the points.
First one rattled in by Emily Lee. Sajans trying to tie this game up at 1 apiece. Lee knocks them both in. 10 points on the day for Emily Lee, joins Jillian Landis as the only players in the double-digit club. Looking inside for Landis. Skips away from her. Great defense by Homan and Patel.
And that was point number 11 for Emily Lee. She's tied with Jillian Landis for the most points in this game.
Directing traffic was Andaya, now with Homan at the high post. Pounds the rock, up and in. Abigail Homan, 9 points on the day. Says, let me go to work. We're gonna go toe for toe against each other, Landis.
Only 1 point away from joining the double-digit club.
And a foul away from the play. Goes against Pomona Pitzer. Looks like it'll go against Abigail Homan, trying to fight through those screens. So back and forth game, we wondered a little bit how Lindfield would respond early. They did. Now Pomona has come back to take the lead. The question is, who will make that run to really separate themselves from the field?
I think that's going to depend on how they play that second half, what adjustments are made in the locker room to correct and conglomerate against their mistakes, their mishaps, and their successes as well.
Mead picked up high by Homan. Landis left alone. Now on the smaller Emily Lee. No foul. Pulled the chair right underneath her, and the senior does not get any luck. Pomona comes up with a big time stop. Now 60 seconds remain.
Now, in theory, the Lindfield Wildcats should get the last bucket of this game. We saw that in the first quarter. Wasn't quite the case. They miffed it away. Will they make that same mistake twice? We're yet to find out.
Lee up and under, doesn't get it. And they will not get the last shot. About an 8-second shot clock, game clock difference. What can the Wildcats produce? Inside Vermeulen, outside Solt. Rattles in and out, picked up by Landis. Up and in! Jillian Landis, big time scream as Pomona concedes. Lindfield with a chance to go up by 1.
This is a really evenly matched game, Nico. We mentioned those average points per game on their opposite seasons, 59 and 57, just a 2-point difference, and we're clearly seeing that there's lots of freshmen on this Pomona Pitzer team, but still the same coach and some of the same strategies coming through.
Landis buries the free throw to put the Wildcats up by 1. Now 15 seconds left for Pomona. Get it into hands of Jaden Lee. Trying to cook, first bucket, Waden can't buy one tonight. And Landis will pick it up. Solt fires away. Oh, almost in. Amelia Solt almost raised the roof with that play. As Lindfield goes into the locker room up 33-32, we're in for a treat in this second half, Zoe.
Absolutely. If you're the Pomona Pitzer Sage Hens, you're breathing a sigh of relief that that half-court shot didn't go in, because that would be such a high note to end your first half on, and you could use that momentum to carry you through. We see the momentum have to stop and restart so often at the half, but when you have that just exclamatory moment, you can use it to carry you through.
Absolutely, and when you have that type of moment, it gives you so much excitement. They almost capped it off, but we also have to talk about just the way they closed out that quarter. They went down after being up. What did you like out of them to close out those final few minutes?
I mean, they really involved other members of their teams. They spread out the points, and Eve Berg and Mead and Solt all putting in the work and upping that production.
Absolutely, and we take a look at these first half highlights. Obviously, 33-32, the score in favor of the Wildcats. 46.7% field goal percentage for Lindfield compared to 45.2 for the Sage Hens. How can Pomona turn it around, would you say, in this second half?
I would say Jaden Lee has to start making shots again. We saw in the first half she was extremely effective. In the second half, her team did step up, like Homan right there, but she really needs to up that production.
Emily Lee, Jaden Lee, as well as Abigail Homan really pouring it on the bench, loving it to begin this game, but it was the Wildcats who responded with the ferocity to close out the half. Big time performances out of Solt and Allie Mead, the surprise performers for the Wildcats in this first half. And now, going into the locker room, it's Pomona who has to answer the questions going into the second half.
Absolutely, and Nico, there's another person to my left.
What's up, everybody?
Come in here, Jad. How you doing tonight, man?
Oh, I can't complain. How about yourself, Nico?
We're doing great. We got a great basketball game in store for us. What are you liking from both of these teams so far?
I mean, Lindfield is just getting three-pointers up. They're just getting so many great open looks, and they are getting it down to their big man in the post, who is just converting on the layups.
Absolutely. Jillian Landis has been a factor all night long. And so we obviously here, we cover the sports, but many of us played sports growing up. And Jad, you were a basketball player through and through, obviously got the height. Tell us a little bit about your experience.
So I live for basketball. I've played my whole life. The photo you are seeing is the guy you are seeing in that photo averaged 15 rebounds per game, and he was definitely putting points up.
Oh, he was putting up buckets right there, rocking the big short look. How old were you in that picture?
That I look about 10 years old, and I'm in my Thunder jersey, ready to drop some free throws in. Speaking of buckets, Jaden Lee has been killing it last season, and I got the chance to interview her earlier today about the expectations for this coming season. I'll send it down to that. What personal goals have you set for yourself, and what team goals have you set for the season?
Last year, I think, as a first year, I was a little bit timid when it came to speaking up on the court, so I think just communicating more clearly on the court with my teammates. And as for team goals, I would say I think we have a larger roster this season, which is really cool. We have a lot of first years, a lot of underclassmen. I think now that we have subs, just run the court more, push more in transition, and communicate clearly on defense. Yeah.
Coming off your freshman season, going into your sophomore year, expectations have risen. How have you prepared for these expectations?
I think I tend to overthink, so instead of worrying about meeting expectations, I think playing is definitely a privilege that I don't want to take for granted, so just giving it my all on the court each time, because injuries can happen or sicknesses, so I don't want to take any game for granted. So yeah, just playing hard each game.
Cool. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jaden Lee hooked in that first quarter, couldn't buy a bucket in the second. They'll need her as this game, 33-32 in favor of Lindfield. We'll see you right after this halftime break. Welcome back wherever you may be watching. Welcome to the Harold Hutton Sports Center. Great to be with you. Nico Schwegler joined by Zoe Franklin alongside Jad Neesham. And Zoe, it's been a back and forth battle. No team has really separated between Pomona Pitzer and Lindfield. The Wildcats lead 33-32. But going to the Sagehen side for Pomona, it's been Emily Lee and Abigail Holman combining for 20 of their 32 points. But Jaden Lee in that first quarter had 6, 0 in the second. How do they get her going in this second half?
If you look at Jaden Lee's statistics from last season, she can score at the three-point line, but she does better inside the arc. So getting her those 2-point shots, even inside the paint, that's how they're going to up her production.
Lindfield picking up right where they left off. Solt forced off the glass, picked up by Mead. Big-time offensive rebound. Lindfield, a very successful offensive rebounding team throughout their time underneath Casey Bunn-Wilson.
And if you've just joined us, Mead is the surprise star of this game. She has 7 points, is 3 for 5 on field goals, normally averaged 4 points per game last season, already at 7. She's been the surprise factor that we didn't see coming.
Andaya picks up her dribble high. Holman has to come around. Now inside with Jaden Lee on the smaller Solt. And we mentioned getting her going. She gets those easy ones. Pomona back up by 1.
And those are her first points since the first quarter. That brings her up to 8. She's now 4 of 8 in this game. And just like I was talking about, inside at the paint, that's where she was comfortable.
Mead will slow it down with Amelia Solt. Solt, the shortest player out there, but she's playing with the biggest heart. Almost had a half-court buzzer beater that just rattled in and out. Patel gets in the passing lane. The freshman blazing forward. Through contact, no foul. And a foul will go against Abigail Holman. Eve Burke back on the rebound for the Wildcats.
And that's the first time we've really mentioned Patel's name in this game. She's gotten that second steal. She had one in the first half. That's been her biggest strength. She's 0-2 on field goals, and that's really it. So seeing her up her production this early in the third quarter is excellent if you're the Sage Hens.
Flipping the script to the Wildcats when Jillian Landis, the big center in the middle, now with the ball, has 14 points in this game. The pace that they play with is a lot more composed, working that shot clock down, now down to 14. But when she's off the court, they play with pace and they play with fire. Vermeulen left alone. Off front rim, kicked out. Solt back inside for Burke.
Vermeulen was someone we mentioned at the top of this game as one of our key players. She's had a relatively quiet game, just 1 rebound. That was her second shot attempt. Are we hoping to see more of her, or has the game of the guards taken over? And if it's working, why change it?
Solt doesn't have the golden touch to roll it in. Just over 2 minutes gone in this third quarter. Lee gets her own, a bit like the first quarter. Has all 4 points to open it up for the Sage Hens.
That's going to bring her into double-digit territory. The only 2 players are Jillian Landis and Emily Lee. Now Jaden Lee joins that club. We talked about the double-digit club, and the more members of your team that can join the double-digit club, the more you can get shots like that to just swirl on in.
36-36 the score after the Eve Burke 3, as she'll pick it up with pace. Mead the other way.
There have been 7 ties in this game, Nico. It has really gone back and forth. This is tie number 7, and a tie is basically 0-0, so you're starting at the beginning every single time that score becomes even.
Unfortunate that it has to be played on neutral ground for both of these teams. You'd love to see one of these sides with the home advantage, getting the crowd into it. This is the perfect back and forth game that you'd want in the beginning of your season. Vermeulen off the glass right before the buzzer went off.
And those are her first points of the game. Vermeulen finally adding to those points. She is the 6th Wildcat with points.
Abigail Holman continues to have her star night. Big time 3 from the sophomore. She's up to 12, a team high now for the Sage Hens.
We've seen that with Jillian Landis in the first quarter as well. Got that early 3. Both centers now have a 3-point. They both shoot well under 30% last season when it comes to 3-pointers, but they're showing that that number's not 0 for a reason. They can shoot them, and they can execute them well.
Now, personally, coming into this second half, I would have said that if Jaden Lee would have started to heat up, it would have spelled trouble for Lindfield. Instead, they've answered the call, and it's been the likes of Eve Burke who's really taken that step up to keep this team in it.
Absolutely. And Eve Burke in that second quarter was 3 of 4 on her last 4 shots. She also has joined the double-digit club, so now 2 players on each team in that double-digit territory with, there's 3 on Pomona Pitzer, but 2 for Lindfield. But they have several other players scratching at the post. The Wildcats hoping to claw their way up and take home that win.
Absolutely. We mentioned Landis and Vermeulen at the top of the show. Here you've seen the home in 3 right before the timeout. Anything you can do, I can do better, she says to Jillian Landis. But we mentioned Vermeulen, we mentioned Landis, but Eve Burke might be really the key cog in this Wildcats squad this season, with the likes of Ella Kobelin, the expected starting point guard, now being out for the rest of the season. What can we expect from her as this season continues to progress, as she takes on that bigger role?
For Eve Burke, she surprised us at the 3-point line. Normally last season she shot under 20% from beyond the arc.
Oof.
This game she shot 1 of 2, so 50% by that statistic, but she's already at her last season average of points, which is 10.
Found inside to Landis, up and in! Another and one coming for Jillian Landis, big bruiser inside.
And we've seen a variety of shots coming from the Wildcats inside the paint, beyond the arc, floaters. We've seen that shot variety, and we've seen it coming from a variety of different players. 6 players on the board with points, Vermeulen being the 6th one recently added.
That last possession almost ran trouble in paradise for the Wildcats. It was Meade who got trapped up near midcourt. Instead, she finds Burke, who has the perfect threaded pass inside to Landis. And instead, it ends up as a 3-point play. Big 32 pulling down another rebound, her 3rd of the night.
The largest lead in this game has been just 4 points. In that second quarter, it was 22-18. Now, that largest lead is equaled, 43-39. Do the Sage Hens have an answer for the Wildcats?
We saw Jaden Lee get 2 quick buckets. Now she's back on the bench. Both Lees on the bench right now, so a lot of that scoring load falls on the likes of Abigail Homan, now in her sophomore year. As with a lot of these freshmen in the lineup, a lot of inexperience that we'll continue to mention for the Sage Hens this year. We'll see how they can come to play as they're now down by 4 in a tight battle in the beginning of their year. Malik. Handoff to Allie Bennett, getting her first playing time of the night. Homan squares up a 3. Can't buy it this time. And a big-time rebound for Vermeulen. 5 on 3 the other way. Burke loses her dribble, somehow gets it back out. Meade looking right back inside for Landis. And they'll call a foul against Jillian Landis. Throws her hands up in frustration. 2nd of the night for Big 32. Usually foul trouble, a sore subject for Jillian Landis, often playing with 4 fouls in many of her games, but she continues to earn the trust of Casey Bunn-Wilson, now in her 10th season. Bunn-Wilson, in her first year with the program, led the team to its first winning season in 5 years prior to her arrival, as well as being a standout player at Division I Oregon State, where she averaged 20 points per game and 6.5 rebounds per game. Also playing pro in several different countries, Greece, Australia, Spain among them. But on the other side, Elena Wu, really a standout legend for Pomona Pitzer in her own right, top 10 in all-time scoring, and the current record holder for most career 3-pointers by a Sage Hens player.
And she's in her 6th season. She's gotten her team to be a SCIAC champion 1 time. The Pomona Pitzer Sage Hen women's basketball team has been a SCIAC champion 16 times in their program's history. 1 out of 6. That's a pretty good percentage if you're Elena Wu. Last season obviously did not add to that. So if you're the Sage Hens under the leadership of Elena Wu, with all that experience from her, with the inexperience of your young team, you hope to blend it in this perfect cacophony that is the game of basketball.
Absolutely. Lindfield up by 4 with just under 5 minutes remaining in this third quarter. Thank you for joining us. Nico Schweigler, Zoe Franklin on the call here tonight. First ever Tier 1 game in CSBN history to not feature a Chapman Athletics team. If you were here with us earlier at 4 o'clock, the Panthers women's basketball team losing to now Division II UT Dallas in heartbreaking fashion, 58-55 at the buzzer. Homan can't buy a 3 after hitting her first.
Interesting that that's her third three-point attempt of the game. She's been 28% the previous season. Interesting that she's going for so many, being that she is the tallest player, standing at 6 feet tall for the Sage Hens.
Not just of the game, third of the third quarter, that is. Maybe the imposing presence of Jillian Landis at 6'2", driving her away from that basket. Vermeulen, trusty left hand, picks up her dribble. Fades it inside. Allie Mead, soft touch, and she continues to excite. 9 points for the sophomore.
And Allie Mead has been that weapon that we didn't see coming, getting into the paint, getting in those shots. She also has a steal and a block, so she's productive on both ends of the floor.
Ball tips off the fingertips of a Sage Hens player. And now Lindfield with their largest lead of the night, 45-39. We mentioned it in the first half. Neither team really getting the separation that they want. It seems like the Wildcats may be the first trying to ride it all the way home into their matchup against Chapman tomorrow night at 7. Be sure to tune in here on CSBN. We'll have all the action covered for that one. Inside, Vermeulen called for it. Gets around the likes of Chico. And largest lead of the night continues to grow for the Wildcats, up to 8.
Lindfield here on a 7-0 run against the Sage Hens, extending that lead to 8 points. Just a few minutes ago, it was 39-38, now 47-39.
Mead away from Joko. Swings it outside, Burke. Vermeulen in the corner. Rattles in and out. Allie Mead there once again.
And
Fought through contact.
You mentioned, Nico, that Chapman lost earlier today, 58-55, heartbreaking loss after clawing their way up from a 28-11 deficit. If you're the Chapman Panthers, are you hoping to go against a Lindfield team that also experienced a loss?
Well, definitely it feels like Lindfield is playing with a bit of their chip on their shoulder as Joko cuts the lead down to 6. Eliminates that 8-0 run. But right now, all they can ask is, how will they guard Jillian Landis? No player on the Chapman team above 5'11". Maybe it will be the senior who has a field day tomorrow night. Knocking in the 3, Sarah Chico. Freshman out of Colorado. Pulls the lead back within 3. Pomona still fighting.
And those are her first points of the game. She's now the 7th Sage Hen to score points on the board. Both teams doing an excellent job of passing the points around. It isn't a one-man show like we saw at the beginning, with Jillian Landis having 9 of the 11 points in that first quarter.
Mead straightaway 3. Tussle on the ground between Jaden Lee and Eve Burke. Possession will stay with the Lindfield Wildcats.
And if you're the Sage Hens, you like Allie Mead taking that shot. She has historically, throughout her last season, not been a three-point shooter, just shooting under 24%. So if you're the Sage Hens, you let Allie Mead take that shot for the risk that she's going to get it. But the statistic that it hasn't been her strong point. Her strong point has been getting inside and getting into the paint, like we've seen with Jaden Lee.
Up and out from Vermeulen. Bit of confusion from Bun Wilson, wondering what happened with the shot clock there, trying to address the referees. Joko, Emily Lee back into the game for the first time this third quarter. Andaya can't tie it up. Kept alive by Chico. Lee off front rim. And it seems like right now the Sage Hens playing with a little bit of desperation that may not be warranted at this stage in the game. Blocking foul will go against Abigail Homan. Eve Burke on the drive will get herself to the line and try and extend this lead back up to 5.
The Sage Hens had some luck, had some good fortune with three-pointers in the early bits of the third quarter, going 2 and 4. Now 2 and 6 in that third quarter, bringing their total just 3 and 10 from beyond the arc.
Pomona now 3 and 10, as you mentioned. Lindfield not much better, actually worse, 2 and 12 from downtown. Burke will knock in the first as they move to 6 of 7 on their free throws. Foul stripe shots being crucial in Division III basketball. If you can knock them down like our very own Chapman Panthers can very well, that's really the decider that can affect a lot of games, especially in those tight ones where you need to close them out in those finishing moments.
Absolutely, and that was part of the heartbreak against UT Dallas just earlier this afternoon. UT Dallas missed 2 free throws in a row, which gave Chapman that opportunity for that 3-point bucket, and that Pomona Pitzer just capitalized on making their 4th 3-pointer of the night.
Sarah Chico, quick 6 points for the freshman. Up inside, Hokema coming in for Jillian Landis, the freshman out of Everson, Washington, continues to be a big-time impact player.
Sarah Chico is having success beyond the arc, but the Lindfield Wildcats are just having success getting points on the board.
Lee left alone in the corner. Can't find it right now. She had a successful first half. Instead, in this third quarter, held scoreless like her teammate Jaden Lee was in the second quarter. Eve Burke takes it back the other way. Lindfield back up by 6.
And the Sagehens smartly slowing it down. We saw in the first quarter the Wildcats went a little crazy, had a half-court frenzy, and it ended with the Sagehens being able to get the last shot as opposed to the Wildcats. The Sagehens smartly trying to use as much clock as possible.
Chico tried to force the pass through the likes of Madison Barter. And we saw something earlier, a milestone moment for Madison Barter earlier in this first half.
Absolutely. Madison Barter hasn't been the scoring factor that you need, but you can't just win a basketball game with scoring. You need to have your rebounds, and Madison Barter's been an excellent rebounder with 4. She's second in rebounds behind Eve Burke.
Meade tries to beat the buzzer, comes up short. 53-47 after 45 minutes. But we have a little fun segment. We're liking to have some fun here on this doubleheader here tonight. And we mentioned Elena Wu earlier this quarter. The head coach of Pomona Pitzer, our very own Jad Neeson, is standing by, not with her, but her dad. Jad, what do you have?
A Pomona Coach Wu, with the father of Pomona Coach Wu. What does Pomona need to do to win this game?
I think they have a deep bench. It's going to help them out, and I think they need to get up and down the floor a little bit, kind of tire out the Lindfield team. And I think their shooting has started to get a little better, so I think things look good for the fourth quarter.
Thank you. And what advice would you give your daughter, being a basketball coach yourself? What advice would you give her in this moment?
Just make sure that she makes her players very comfortable down the stretch, because they're going to have to hit some big shots. Just get everyone relaxed on the bench, feeling good, and get them confident and ready to shoot some buckets, get some buckets in the hole for sure.
Thank you so much for that. I'll be tossing it back up to you guys.
Jad, always great to hear from players' parents, but rarely do you ever get to hear from the coaches' parents. Always great to hear it from Kim Wu, dad of Elena Wu. You expect to see his daughter really implement those tactics here in this fourth quarter as they go down to the wire, down by 6, Zoe.
Absolutely, and you have the advantage of the coach blood being in your DNA, and we've seen it with the Sagehens and their program. We're going to need to see it here in this fourth quarter as they're down 6 to start this last 10 minutes of the game.
Down by a pair of triples. They've been able to knock it down primarily through Sarah Chico in that third quarter. She starts the fourth, gets it right here. Kicked out on Daya. Closed out well by Eve Burke. Trying to feed Emily Lee. 9 on the shot clock for the Sagehens. Andaya forces it up, almost gets the bounce. She'll go to the line for 2 after the hard contact. Eve Burke will pick up another foul on the night. That is Burke's third. First Lindfield player to reach the 3-foul mark. Homan will get a rest for the Sagehens as she's the only player for Pomona with 3.
And these are the first free throws of the second half for the Sagehens. Did not throw a free throw in that entire third quarter.
And we mentioned closing it out. These are the free throws that count. These are the free throws that get you back in this game or leave the door open when you miss them. Andaya rattles in the first, looking for number 2 here. She gets them both. Sage Hens continue to be efficient from the line, now 5 of 6.
That was a swish.
Jaden Ray now off to Allie Mead. Surprise star tonight, can't get the touch. Has struggled a bit these past few minutes. And Mead will pick up her second personal of the night. Now with Kayla Malik, freshman out of Encino, California. Handoff, Lee to Lee. Airballs it all, Hokema picks it up. Eve Burke the other way. Can the Wildcats from Washington pick up a win, go into tomorrow happy against Chapman, or will Pomona come away with the comeback? Sage Hens down by 4, get it into your best player's hands. Jaden Lee goes right at Jaden Ray. And Jaden on Jaden violence ends in Jaden Lee going to the line for a pair of free throws.
Well, if you're the Sage Hens, you would at least want Jaden on Jaden violence as opposed to Lee on Lee contact. Jaden Lee, these are her first free throws of the game, has 10 points, make it 11. She's been 5 of 9 this game, scoreless in that second half. A lot of those empty and missed shots coming in the second quarter when Pomona Pitzer was still able to maintain this closeness, never letting the lead go beyond 4. But in this third quarter, we saw that the Wildcats were able to extend that lead up to 8 points.
That lead now cut down to 2. Sage Hens continuing to stick around. Pomona averaged just over 60 points a game last year. Lindfield just under that at 59 a game. Mead gets by Chico. Pull-up jumper too strong. And now Pomona can slow it down. Tie this game back up after really dominating that first quarter. Quick hands from Mead, getting in the passing lanes, and Allie Mead keeps it in. Sophomore back the other way, too strong. Burke on the cleanup, can't get it to go. And Jaden Lee earns a jump ball. It will stay with Lindfield. But those are the opportunities that the Wildcats cannot afford to miss down the stretch of this game.
Jaden Lee, the only member on her team to have any blocks. She has 2 blocks. As we mentioned earlier this game, she was the leader in blocks last season with 19, already 2 in the second game of the season. Getting those plays on both ends of the field, like we said, she hasn't been her most productive in scoring, but she has been one of the most productive and essential on both ends of the court.
Like she has been in her freshman year, now continuing it over to her sophomore campaign. Expect to see a lot out of her these next 3 years. Foul will go against the likes of Tana Hokema. Hokema coming out of Everson, Washington, a 2-time second-team All-Northwest Conference 1A player at Nooksack Valley High School. Fun little one to say right there.
Almost as fun as Walla Walla. Who, if you're just joining us, that is who the Wildcats played their exhibition game against.
And a tie game we have. Abigail Homan back up as the leading scorer for Pomona Pitzer, 14 for the big 6-foot sophomore.
You don't mind a little friendly competition for the leading scorer as long as it means that you are leading. And we're back to 0-0 again for tie number 8 here in this game.
Just under 7.5 left to play. Tied game, you mentioned it, Zoe, 0-0 basically at this point. And it's felt like that. Seesaw battle inside Hokema. Stripped away by Homan. 5 left on the shot clock for Lindfield to get something off. Jillian Landis alongside Mickey Vermeulen will come into the game for Hokema, as well as Madison Barter. So you're bringing in the closers. You expect Jillian Landis to really be the focal point of this offense over these last 7:15.
Someone who is staying in, though, is Sarah Chico, who had those 2 3-pointers and really kept the Pomona pitcher Sage Hens alive, allowing them to close the gap and not let it get beyond reach.
Joko mishandles it right into the hands of Burke. Step around. Oh, what a finish!
Look at that flare from behind the back. Hello!
Homan just stood there like a pole. Didn't expect that out of the junior. And Eve Burke says, let me give a little bit of that flare. Chico can't convert from that corner that she did earlier, but she gets into the passing lanes, misfires. She thought she didn't have as much time, instead mistimed it. And Pomona Pitzer comes up empty-handed. Frustration right in front of us from these Sage Hen fans.
That was an excellent second chance effort, just unable to convert.
Now Vermeulen, 15 to shoot. Landis, top of the key, swings it over to Solt. Thought about the 3.
And then you see Patel on the sidelines. You have to wonder if she's coming in for Chico. Patel's had 5 rebounds and 2 steals, trying to stop this offense of the Wildcats, perhaps.
Went to Chico instead, intercepted by Allie Mead. Mead will slow it down, now under 6 minutes remain. 55-53, Wildcats up by 2. Mead, 12 to shoot. Burke with the cut inside. Rushed it through. And a timeout from Elena Wu. We heard from her father earlier before the quarter. And right now in crunch time with her team down by 2, not taking any chances. Final 5:42 here at the Harold Hutton Sports Center. Between these two teams, Pomona Pitzer, Lindfield. We're sorry if you came for Chapman. That was earlier as they lost 58-55, but do not worry. They'll be back tomorrow night against this Lindfield squad at 7 p.m. Be sure to tune into that. Justin Lee alongside the rest of our great crew calling that game. But what can we expect out of this final 5:42 from both of these teams? Trying to come away with some big-time wins. Pomona looking for their second of the year. Lindfield trying to get off to a good start before tomorrow night.
Well, if you happen to stumble into the Chapman Sports Broadcasting Network, hoping for a great game of Chapman basketball, I present to you a great game of basketball. And you can come in as a fan a little bit neutral and just appreciate the game for how close it's been. Allie Mead has been the difference maker. She is leading in playtime in this game. She has 3 steals, the leading in all steals across both teams. You have to imagine that you have to get around her, and you just have to make sure that your playmakers get the shots that they can make. If that's Jaden Lee, that's inside the paint. If that's really either of these teams, it's inside the paint, snaking around, and if it's an open 3, do you go for it or not?
That has to be the question going forward. Allie Mead averaged just under 20 minutes a game last year. She's up to 28, as you mentioned. Zoe leads the Lindfield squad, also with 11 points. She averaged 4 last year, as well as just under 2 rebounds, 2 assists per game. Tonight, 3 rebounds, 4 assists with those 3 steals that you mentioned earlier, Zoe.
And for a team that we talked about with so many upperclassmen, it's the underclassmen who's been the secret sauce in that In-N-Out burger if you're a California native.
I like that. We're probably going to In-N-Out after this. Shake it up with a double-double. It seems like Abigail Homan or Jillian Landis might be on a collision course in the rebounds department for their own double-doubles.
Absolutely. Homan has 7 rebounds. She would need just 3 more to get that double-double.
Emily Lee doesn't care about burgers. She's just eating at the rim. Tied game 55-55. Her first points of the second half have to feel good.
And we talked about Jaden Lee struggled in the second quarter. Emily Lee struggled in the third quarter. You would hope that mix and that secret ingredient is that both Lees are serving up big time.
Mickey Vermeulen trying to stop that. And a collective groan of sighs from the Pomona fan base as Abigail Homan will get called for her 4th foul, I believe. And that's a big-time loss over these final 5 minutes, as she'll have to go to the bench 1 more and she's out, and you cannot afford that against the likes of Jillian Landis down the stretch of this game.
That leaves Landis with a much shorter defender in Patel, who's on her right now.
And a foul off the ball. It looks like Patel will get called for it. She ran right into the shorter Mickey Vermeulen.
And Mickey Vermeulen, much like Sarah Chico, was that third quarter secret ingredient. We've been talking a lot about ingredients, but that's what we need. We need a medley of ingredients for a successful game. And we saw her with those steals, rebounds, and her own 4 points, really keep it adding to that momentum of the Wildcats.
12 left to shoot. Mead kicks outside. Vermeulen, jab step, has the soft touch.
Nothing
She's
but
cooking
net.
up a storm. And as you continue to mention, Zoe, who's going to have the best final recipe when it's all said and done and walk away with the win here tonight?
We've been preheating for too long. It's time for food to be served.
Chico steps back on Vermeulen, gets the soft touch. What a night for Sarah Chico, the freshman, now up to 8 points.
And there's something to be said, even if you are scoreless in the first half of the game or brought in as a substitute, you can still have major impact in this game, as we've seen with Vermeulen and Chico.
Landis defended well by Charlotte Patel, the freshman, senior on freshman down the stretch. We'd have to imagine with Abigail Homan out on that bench.
Patel doing really well, scoreless in this game, but still 5 rebounds and 2 steals like we mentioned, and having the difficult task of making sure that Jillian Landis doesn't add to her 17 points.
Couldn't add her first bucket on the jumper there. Now Solt sees court in front of her, gets inside, touch off the glass. Now Mead will restart. Ella Copeland, the expected point guard for this Lindfield Wildcat squad, now out for the season. And we thought it might be Eve Burke. Instead, it's Allie Mead directing all the traffic. Can't buy a bucket, though, ever since midway through the third quarter. Chico on Daya, right into the chest. A Mickey Vermeulen big-time charge drawn for the Wildcats.
Vermeulen, an excellent example of if you're not having a productive night offensively, the things you can do defensively, or even the things that don't count on the scoreboard. You don't necessarily see causing a charge or turning over the ball, but you see that if you're in person in the game. And Vermeulen has been that player, that pesky player for the Pomona Pitzer Sagehens.
And that's exactly the type of player that Casey Bunn-Wilson needs. Every single team needs a player like that, down to get dirty. And finally, Allie Mead gets her first bucket since midway through the third quarter, puts the Wildcats up by 2. Malik, they're looking inside. Mead overreached as she tried to deny Jaden Lee. And we see it time and time again, closers being able to find their way to the line, get their own shots down the stretch. Abigail Homan will come back into the game with her 4 fouls. Charlotte Patel with some big-time minutes defending Jillian Landis.
And you see on your scoreboard in front of you, 59-59. It is 59-57. Jaden Lee can make it 59-59 if she knocks down both of these free throws, but will not make it as she misses the first one. A chance to make it 59-58.
Uncharacteristic miss for the sophomore who led the Skyak in free throw percentage. Pure on the second. Pomona down 59-58. Final 2.5 minutes left.
Nobody on this team other than Logan Roberts, who we haven't seen, wears the number 1. That is the number you don't want to lose by, 1. That's all it takes, and for the Sagehens, they need that number to be in their direction.
Solt will reset after her missed 3. Calls for the screen from Landis. Picked up high by 3 blue shirts. Solt into the lane, left all alone. And Freight Train puts the Lindfield Wildcats up by 3.
That was a little bit of sugar, spice, and everything nice. Well, unless you're the Sagehens, of course.
Lee tries to tie it up. In and out. Wildcats back the other way. Solt slows it down. She's starting to feel herself. Vermeulen picked up by Malik. Landis against Homan with her 4 fouls. Solt into the lane, 10v10. And a foul will go against Pomona Pitzer. Simply have to wait for who it is.
If it's on Homan, And it is.
And it's crucial now for Pomona to stay disciplined. Lindfield not quite in the bonus just yet. Pomona is in the bonus at this point with 91 seconds left. Charlotte Patel, the freshman, big time minutes going against a senior.
And for Abigail Homan, that is foul number 5. If you're keeping track, that means that she is out of this game.
And another big time 5-second violation. You cannot afford that if you're Amelia Solt. Look for a timeout. You have 3 left with 91 seconds left. Those mistakes starting to compound for Lindfield.
Absolutely. Amelia Solt was really, we saw her driving the ball in those last 3 possessions, but just as much as you're driving it, if you make that costly mistake, you might not be able to celebrate those victories that you had.
Lee up and out. Pomona still retains possession. Jaden Lee, step back. Gets fouled. Pomona crowd loving it. Bench rises to its feet as we wind down to the final 65 seconds.
And Sarah Chico, we mentioned this young Pomona Pitzer team. She's one of 7 freshmen. You see the fearlessness of her going for those rebounds. She has 5 on this game. And we saw her in the corner clapping for the ball. She had a defender on her, but she was ready to take that shot. We saw she got those 2 3-pointers in that third quarter, essential. But now it's on Jaden Lee.
Shot just under 87% from the stripe last year. Tonight, 4 for 6. Final 55 here at the Harold Hutton Sports Center. Landis picked up by Patel, high up at the key. Vermeulen up inside, no foul. And kicks off, ricochets off on Daya, kept alive by Burke. And a timeout by Casey Bunn-Wilson. Or excuse me, it's going to be a foul against Charlize Undaya. So that's the 5th foul now for Lindfield. They're into the bonus, big time get for them as they'll be shooting free throws for the rest of this final 41.7.
And you saw that sea of blue surrounding the Lindfield Wildcats. It was excellent defense, but they lost control of the ball and it going off of the foot, giving the Lindfield Wildcats a chance to regain it with just 40 seconds left.
In and out on the second. And a quick timeout called by Elena Wu.
Is this feeling a little bit like deja vu, Nico? It's feeling a little bit like deja vu. We saw a missed free throw in the UT Dallas and Chapman game. Now, mind you, that was with 10 seconds left on the clock, but we're seeing it right here. Pomona Pitzer down by 3 against Lindfield, who just missed a free throw, keeping it within a 1-possession game.
Pomona 4 of 15 on threes. Sarah Chico has 2 of those threes that she hit in the third quarter. Maybe she comes into this game. But do you trust the freshman, or do you go to the likes of Emily Lee, the junior, Jaden Lee, or Abigail Homan? Those 3 have been the main go-getters for Pomona.
And we're just going to have to see what play head coach Elena Wu has drawn up. We saw in the third quarter her dad in the stands cheering her on, traveled down from Pomona to support her. A true supporter. We're going to see it right here play out.
Lee Chico alongside Patel. Undaya gets the ball to begin potentially Pomona's last look at a chance to tie this game. Jaden Lee, Chico left alone, buries it!
Oh my goodness gracious, Sarah Chico! Let them know your name, girl!
Casey Bunn-Wilson needs timeout. Infuriated with the referees right now. She thought there was an illegal screen. Pomona Pitzer pleased with themselves as Sarah Chico. They drew it up to perfection. 3 threes on the night. That one the biggest of them all.
And Sarah Chico, scoreless in her first game in that win against UC Santa Cruz. Now she's a big-time player. She hit 2 essential threes and another one here in this fourth quarter with just under 30 seconds to go, Nico.
I haven't seen that much anticipation, that sparkle in the eyes of that Pomona bench all night long. Sarah Chico raising the roof, giving this crowd something to cheer about here at Chapman University. First ever Tier 1 game that we're doing where Chapman Athletics is not involved, and it surely has not disappointed between the SCIAC and Northwest Conference opponents.
And you have to commend Coach Wu for trusting her players, seeing that Chico had the hot hand, but now we're going to see what Bun Wilson has drawn up. If the Wildcats are going to pull something out in the last second.
So barely any difference between shot clock and game clock. Get it to Mead. Inside Burke. Tough finish. Timeout by the Sage Hens. I don't think Elena Wu would have wanted them to inbound as they lose 0.6 seconds. It was 9.4 after Burke's layup. They get down to 8.8 as Lindfield continues to claw back through resistance.
Now, same question. Do you draw up another three-point play and trust that your offense, who's been 5 and 16 from the three-point line, to make it, or do you go for the safer option, in theory, of just going for a two-pointer and hoping to tie the game and win in overtime?
Jillian Landis opened up the show, 9 of Linfield's first 11 points, but ever since, it's been the Eve Burke show, 19 points, 9 rebounds. What's impressed her so far tonight?
What's impressed me about Eve Burke is her creativity with her shots. We saw that backwards layup and the shake and bake and the sauce and the spice. Eve Burke has been creative and keeping the Pomona Pitzer defense on their toes, but it's about the offense now.
Final seconds. Pomona can go for the win or tie. Get it to Lee. Final 2. She gets it! This game has everything down to the wire. Final point for Jaden Lee. Big time shot.
Oh me, oh my, I hope you're a Chapman sports fan watching this game, because this right here is excellent basketball. If you have no stakes in this game, you can appreciate the game. Game knows game, and it's 64-64 with 0.4 seconds on the clock, Nico.
Unbelievable. And if you're a Chapman fan, don't look away. If this is the Pomona Pitzer side that you're going to see all season long, maybe they are a force to be reckoned with in the SCIAC after going just 2-14 in the conference last year.
Absolutely, and we mentioned at the start of this game, these teams last season, Pomona averaging 57 points, Lindfield averaging 59 points, usually letting their opponents get anywhere from 3 to 8 points on them throughout the season. They've scored over that by 5 and 7 points. There's 0.4 seconds left on the clock. Nico, can they do anything, or is it looking like it's gonna be overtime?
I'm not sure, Zoe. I mean, obviously, 0.4 seconds, not a lot of time. Need to get something in quickly. Toss it in, there's going to be nothing as Mead just throws it up to no man's land. Pomona Pitzer, the resilience they've had, unreal performance from them here in this second half to bring it back. It's been back and forth. What can we expect in these final 5 minutes? Or potentially, could we see another five-minute period coming up in double overtime?
Excitement, Nico. That's the word for it. Lindfield was up by 8 in that third quarter. Pomona Pitzer clawed their way back. I know that the Wildcats are the ones with claws, but the Sage Hens using those, what do chickens have?
Talons?
Talons!
I guess, right?
They clawed their way back with their talons, and they're making it an exciting game. I'm expecting to see speed. We saw it in the first quarter, and I'm expecting to see it in the first quarter of overtime.
Maybe a fairy tale ending for one of these teams. Maybe we'll continue to go even further. All the action here on CSBN Sports, live on Flow Sports. We'll be right back after this. Live.
A 30-second break.
I can hear her. Welcome to overtime, the first one here at the Harold Hutton Sports Center this season. does not belong to the Chapman Panthers, but rather to the SCIAC Classic between a SCIAC opponent in the Pomona-Pitzer Sagehens and the Lindfield Wildcats. 64-64. 60 minutes not enough, 40 minutes not enough to separate these two teams who've been back and forth all night long.
And something to mention now in overtime in just a second.
And can't quite tell exactly what happened there. And we're getting from the referees that maybe Pomona-Pitzer wasn't going the right way. Can't quite tell. At first I thought with the hand motion that it was a carry dribble instead. Just a little bit of confusion to begin this overtime. So Pomona-Pitzer will go from the right of your screen, to the left. Lindfield will go from the left to the right. As we will restart this period, final 5 minutes potentially between these two teams.
And the clock reset back to 5 minutes. What I was going to say is in overtime, fouls do not reset. So Abigail Holman will be out for this game, which means that Charlotte Patel is going to be on Landis. She won that initial tip-off, but because it was done incorrectly, it was Landis who ultimately got the jump on her. But Patel, 6 feet tall like Holman, has not made it easy for Landis.
Stop and start by Emily Lee, just couldn't find the final touch. Has not been her second half, carries over to her first shot of overtime. We're tied at 64. We mentioned in the third quarter, it feels like 0-0 when they were tied up at 53 apiece.
Now it's really 0-0 if you're feeling like it's the start of the game all over, except instead of 40 minutes, you got 5 minutes.
And an offensive foul against Jillian Landis. Big time pickup, her third of the game, joins the likes of Allie Mead as well as Eve Burke. 3 fouls between that trio tonight.
Foul trouble, definitely something you want to look out for in overtime. No one on this team other than Holman, who is fouled out, has over 3 fouls, but on the Pomona-Pitzer side, Andaya and Patel both have 3 fouls each, so keep an eye out for them.
Landis goes out, a bit surprising considering that this is for the game. Jaden Lee doesn't mind. She gets to her spot, had the game tire, left just 0.4 seconds left, and she gets the first points of overtime. Pomona up by 2.
And Jaden Lee really proving how she was able to, as a freshman, be the leading scorer for the Pomona-Pitzer Sagehens, as that's going to be her 18th point of the game.
They leave Mead alone. Picked up by Burke, her 10th rebound of the game. She's got a double-double.
We thought that might go to Abigail Holman, but Burke making that mark her own.
And Burke will find herself back at the line once more. It's gone 4 for 6 from the foul stripe tonight. Looking for points 20 and 21 on these ensuing shots. Also has 11 rebounds now. Buries the first, pulls this game back within 1. She's been unbelievable tonight.
Absolutely. Eve Burke, a junior, averaged 10 points last season, now at 21 points, doubling her average. We talked about sneaky key players, and Mead being one of them, Burke being the other one.
3:20 left. Andaya, hounded by Mead. Chico, game-tying 3 earlier in the fourth quarter. Tipped up and over to Andaya. Drives in, left-handed finish. Can't get it to go. Every moment tense between these two teams. Every point counting. Every single mental moment mattering that much more. Patel will tip it up and out.
14 ties, Nico. There have been 14 times ties in this game. 14 times have these teams had an equal score.
They continue at that here right now, 66. Hokema gets down on the ground, and what a smart play by Charlotte Patel. She got the initial tip out and then realized that if she stayed on top, she would have been called for an over-the-back foul. Instead, allows Emily Lee to come in, sweep up the rest, and they get a possession back in their favor. What a play by the freshman.
Patel, we talked about these plays that aren't necessarily on the scoreboard. While she does have 2 steals and 6 rebounds, that being aware of what the foul would be and making it so your team has the ball, so Lee has a chance like that. Excellent IQ.
Emily Lee cannot buy a 3 in this second half.
It's been a rough night for threes for both of these teams. 5 of 17 for the Sage Hens, 2 of 14 for the Wildcats. That hasn't stopped it from being a much higher score than these teams saw all of last season.
Vermeulen, 8 to shoot for Lindfield. Offensive foul! Charlize Undaya getting into the lane. Tana Hokema has to take the long trot back as she'll take an even longer trot all the way back to that bench. Jillian Landis into the game for the final 2 minutes.
A little bit risky by Undaya. She has those 3 fouls like we mentioned. Patel also at 4. Now Patel also at 6 feet tall. She has to be really careful because if she's out, then it really becomes who is going to defend Jillian Landis.
Eve Burke the other way after the steal. Finds Amelia Solt. Landis runs the floor. Burke back into the lane. Bread and butter all night long. Sagens have had no answer. Elena Wu needs a timeout.
Eve Burke has been absolutely critical in this game. 8 of 13 field goal attempts. Not afraid to go for those shots, going into the paint. And she only has attempted 2 3-point goals from beyond the arc, made one of them, but most of her shots and most of her success has been inside the paint with creativity. Eve Burke, historically not a great 3-point shooter, under 20%, so she has to make her mark in other ways, and she's really making it tonight.
They expected a big jump out of her. She had her first career double-double versus Lewis and Clark last year with 13 points, 10 rebounds. I'm sure she's feeling herself tonight. 23 points, 11 rebounds against this Pomona Pitzer side. Pomona trying to go 2-0 after starting really not the best way that they would have wanted last year. Lindfield potentially on the verge of their first win in their opening game.
Absolutely, and as we mentioned, both of these teams would love a win. Lindfield playing Chapman tomorrow, which you can see here on the Chapman Sports Broadcast Network on Flow Sports. Regardless of the outcome here, that game will be happening tomorrow.
Final 91 seconds. I feel like I said this earlier in the fourth quarter when it was tied up. Instead, Lindfield up by 2 at this point in overtime. Thank you for joining us, Nico Schwegler alongside Zoe Franklin. We're down to the wire between Pomona Pitzer and Lindfield. Emily Lee, can she get it? No, she cannot. And a foul down on the ground. We'll see who it's on. Looks like it's Mickey Vermeulen, who just got over the back of Jaden Lee, continues to do it all for Pomona.
That's her first foul. She's been very disciplined this entire game, not having a foul. We mentioned that in the third quarter we had her name a lot. That was the first time she scored.
And finally, for the first time since the fourth quarter began, Jaden Lee hits a first free throw. Led the SCIAC in free throw percentage last year at 86.8%. Makes it 6 of 8 tonight. Jaden Lee doing her team proud. This game tied up 68 apiece.
If you can believe it, folks, we're already hitting a minute in overtime, and this game is still tied up. Tie number 15. That's right, 15.
Allie Mead continues to be an X factor. Lindfield back up by 2. Final 54 seconds left.
The Wildcats have really trusted Mead with the ability to take the ball. She's 6 of 16, but critical in those points.
Jaden Lee can't buy it that time. Good defense from Burke, who continues to be the player of the game for Lindfield.
And Holt slowing it down wisely. We saw in the first quarter what happened when the Wildcats didn't slow it down. The Sage Hens got the last say.
Solt throws it right away. Final possession. Pomona can hold if they want. Lee goes straight at him. Wanted the contact instead. Ties this game up at 70.
Oh, could you imagine that crowd if we were at Pomona Pitzer right now? They'd be screaming their heads off.
Jaden Lee continues to come up clutch 70-70 with the final 15 of overtime. Perhaps we're in store for another 5 minutes. But with the way that both these teams are playing, you have to say one of them wants to walk away with the win. It's just a matter of, will it be the team in white or will it be the team in blue?
Well, if you're the team in blue, you hope it's the team in blue. But if you're the team in white and purple, you hope it's the team in white and purple. It's kind of as simple as that. Both of these teams are riding high. We've seen surprise stories. Chico, Meade, Burke, and we want to give a shout out to Cottrell, also getting her first points of her freshman season. Those 2 points in the second quarter. Surprises all around, and it's been those X factors that you didn't quite expect that have made this game so competitive.
So final 15 seconds. It's been Eve Burke with the hot hand right now for the Wildcats. What are you running out of this play?
A little bit more time than at the end of the fourth quarter. 0.4 seconds, a lot different than 15. They have time to set up a shot, draw a play.
Final 10, Meade goes inside. Can't buy it. Patel with the rebound. And they'll earn a jump ball. Elena Wu was signaling for timeout. And a big time possession, one back for Lindfield. Both teams with one timeout remaining.
And a big time reaction from this crowd. There's a couple of Pomona Pitzer loyalists who have made the drive out here. Very upset with that call, Nico.
Lindfield wanting to check out a potential dead spot. And even with the performances of Jillian Landis, Eve Burke with 23 points of her own, it's been Allie Meade, 15 points, entrusted to take that final shot by Casey Bunn-Wilson, now in her 10th season as head coach of this program. Down to the wire we go. Final 5.5 seconds remain of overtime. Burke fouled by Emily Lee. 3.6 remains, and Eve Burke back to the line. 6 of 8 tonight for number 4.
Eve Burke, a 76% free throw shooter last season. Pretty good percentage. We've seen percentages don't always mean anything. In this game, Jaden Lee has had a rough shooting night from the free throw line compared to her 87%, and we see just there exactly that. This is a big time moment. Even just one means that Pomona Pitzer has to score, and they don't have the opportunity to reset in double overtime. And
Burke
that's
drops
the one.
it in. That is the one. Thankfully for Pomona Pitzer's sake, they have one timeout left. They will advance it into the front court with 3.6 remaining. Unlike at the end of regulation where they were looking to tie it, this time it's really win or go home. Pomona will not play here tomorrow. Lindfield looks to go into their game against Chapman here tomorrow night on the end of a high. Eve Burke, the highest of them all, at 24 points. Unbelievable. And she came through clutch, and that's a big-time mental hurdle. You missed the first, all the eyes are on you. She comes through for her team, potentially a chance to win them the game.
Eve Burke, 24 points, unexpected. Something that we did expect, Jaden Lee, 22 points, 8 of 13. Do we think that the ball's going to go to Jaden Lee? It could. We saw that at the end of the fourth quarter. Jaden Lee was the one to get the ball. But unlike the fourth quarter, and we're going to see a winner here. You're either going to make the shot or you're going to miss it. It's really that simple.
Final 3.6 remains in overtime. If you're just joining us, where have you been all this time? We couldn't even last 40 minutes of game time without going into an extra 5. You'd have to imagine Jaden Lee, final seconds, comes up short, and Lindfield walks out with a big-time win, 71-70. Wildcats waltz out on top.
If you joined us in the third quarter, you heard us mention a lot about ingredients. Looking for that special sauce? Well, they found it, and that name was Eve Burke.
They cooked up the winning recipe indeed, and it was Eve Burke all night long, particularly in that second half, as you mentioned, Zoe. What impressed her so far, so much from you down the stretch of this game?
The resilience. Lindfield was up 8 points in that third quarter, and they lost it to the Pomona Pitzer Sagehens. So many ties back and forth in this game, 15, a quarter of an hour in ties. Eve Burke had the creativity and the momentum to keep going. They saw that Jillian Landis was well guarded by Hoagman and then by Patel, so they did something different. They went to Burke, who they didn't expect.
That was an unbelievable performance from both of these teams. If you're a neutral watcher, like most of our Chapman fans, then this was the ultimate game to watch. I'm sure Carol Jew was in the stands all night long, peeping what she might see out of Lindfield tomorrow night. An unbelievable performance from the Wildcats to walk away with the win. This game had everything, Zoe.
Absolutely, and you're seeing our game highlights. We're seeing Carol Jew, that head coach for Chapman, across on the stands with her glasses, observing everything that we saw. And Meade, we can't forget to mention her, had an absolutely explosive game, 15 points, well above her 4-point average last season. And it was a game of the underclassmen when we thought it was going to be a game of the upperclassmen.
It was the underclassmen indeed, particularly for Pomona. Abigail Homan had to foul out in the fourth quarter. Left some questions with Charlotte Patel as the center down the stretch in overtime. She answered the call, but ultimately Pomona Pitzer walks back all the way up north with a 1-1 record. Lindfield 1-0 on the season. And Amelia Solt, another player who stepped up big time, didn't have the most points, just 5 2 of 13 shooting from the field, but 4 rebounds, 4 assists. She was a playmaker through and through. And Sarah Chico, big-time moments, call for big-time players. Jaden Lee was the answer all night long, just couldn't come up at the last minute to give her team the lead.
Absolutely. And with Sarah Chico, I'm looking forward to seeing her all season. These were her first 11 points of her freshman year. After being scoreless in their first win against Santa Cruz, I'm expecting big things for this Pomona Pitzer team, even with that 1-point loss.
Absolutely. We'll see what Chico, Jaden Lee, and the rest of Pomona Pitzer have in store. But down on the sidelines, our very own Jad Nism, standing with our CSBN MVP, Eve Burke, who had the game of her life. Jad?
Connect the entire game. How were you guys able to pull away at the end and defeat Pomona?
I thought we honestly just out-hustled them at the end. Just a lot of hustle plays, grabbing boards, and just scoring under pressure was really good for us, I think.
Yeah. Speaking of boards, 11 rebounds for you. How did that impact the game?
Well, I mean, it got us the ball up the floor. I just tried to push it as soon as I got it up and try to get us quick buckets towards the end there.
And this has been the MVP, Eve Burke. I'll be tossing it back up to you guys.
Thank you so much, Jad. Great work down there on the sidelines. A big congratulations to you for your on-camera debut. Eve Burke showed out. It wasn't just the 24 points and 11 rebounds. It was also 8 of 13 shooting from the field, 7 of 10 from the free throw line, one of which being the winning free throw in overtime. Unbelievable performance from the junior.
Absolutely.
And as we take a look at some of these MVP highlights, she continued to impress after struggling a bit in that first half, Zoe.
Absolutely. Eve Burke, as we've mentioned, is not a three-point shooter, but that didn't stop her from being the star of tonight's show, getting into the paint, having flexibility and movement, and getting those creative shots. That was a beautiful shot. That might have been the prettiest shot on this pie tonight.
Unbelievable, nifty craftiness. And you're seeing this pretty much every single shot that she's taking is a layup within the paint, and she was getting those rebounds, getting second chance opportunities for her team throughout this game. Unbelievable showing from her. And as we look forward towards tomorrow's matchup with Lindfield versus Chapman, how does Chapman respond after Lindfield coming into tomorrow on this high?
If you're Chapman, it gives you a little bit of hope with your shorter team because you have a lot of defenders at that guard position. We saw another freshman in that Chapman game being able to utilize that freshness and that youth and vigor and getting to that outside line. And if you're defending against Burke, you know that she likes to go in. So forcing her out to that three-point line where she typically isn't comfortable, having her take that shot and risk it rather than letting her get into her comfort spot.
Absolutely. Chapman, another young team going against the very experienced Lindfield Wildcat squad. They walk out of this one 1-0. Chapman now 1-2 on the season. We'll see how they respond tomorrow night. Pomona Pitzer walk out tonight 1-1. But for our entire CSBN crew, our director, Angelique Ramirez, our producer, Ainsley Savant, Jad Nism down on the sidelines, Zoe Franklin, I'm Nico Schwegler saying so long from Orange, California, where Pomona Pitzer loses to Lindfield 71-70. We'll see you tomorrow night for Chapman versus Lindfield at 7 o'clock.